Camilla. Oh, there we go. Got it. As long as one of us is recording it, I don't care. As long as it's recorded.
Yes,
Um,
it's recording.
yeah, it's recording. So everybody, welcome Camilla. Obviously, you've met her, seen her before. Camilla's going to talk very different today from the language of listening and strengths, etc. So something very different, which I think is very much needed after spending some time with you, all ladies. As you know, Camilla is my parenting coach, or was my parenting coach, but she's still always there. I couldn't always message her. And we were just talking before we started, and this is my little piece of paper just to prove I do this stuff. And it says, you can't see it, but it says empower Hugo. Okay,
Yes.
empower Hugo, not control Hugo, empower Hugo. And that was the massive change. It wasn't, talking about his strengths, listening to him and allow him to speak and allow him to speak his truth. And something that came up, in every single one of your rapid hypnosis trainings is where you didn't feel that you ever were heard or understood, right? So nobody actually said to you, how are you feeling, right? And listen to you. And that's come up in every single person's hypnosis so far. And we all do it, don't we? We all kind of say, oh, how are you feeling? And they might say, oh, I feel sad. And you could go, well, I feel sad as well because I was waiting for you to put your shoes on. So you think that you're asking them about their feeling, but actually you're not. So it's like, I feel sad. And it's just acknowledging that sadness. And that's something that Camilla just taught me and just went boom. So it says empower Hugo, and let him be and accept him. Right.
Yes, I love that.
Accept him. And that was the
Yes.
biggest kind of thing, like, because it was like, why is my child this way? Why is my child that way? Right. And then when I learned to accept him, it was like, oh, that
He
just made, and
changes.
yeah, and look
This
at
is one of
things.
the premises of language
Yeah,
of listening is
yeah,
all growth is through acceptance.
yeah,
It's
and
acceptance
and
of who
like you
your
said,
child is.
Camilla, look through the child's eyes. And I was just like, oh God, never done this before. So Camilla is my parenting coach. As I said, Camilla hasn't done this for free. I paid full whack, for Camilla because she's totally worth it. And the transformation that we got as our little family was totally worth it. Okay. So obviously, whenever we're looking at purchasing a program, we need to look at what we're going to gain out of it, right? So over to you, Camilla. I'm going to shut up.
Oh,
Over to
thank you.
you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so lovely to see you all tonight. So today I was talking with Emma, talking about how to parent together with our partners, how to get on the same side and how to work together, especially if you disagree with your partner. And I know that can be such a huge cause of frustration. I know when I was struggling, as many of you know, my daughter is now 12 and my son is 14, but my daughter was one of the 0 to 60 kind of kids that took over family life. And I was fighting with our partner over the best way to discipline her. And it breaks marriages up, doesn't it? If you're always fighting about the best way to discipline. And that's what I love. Language of listening actually gives you both. It gives you a rock solid coaching model the tools you can use, which you've seen from my last session I've done with you. But also it changes how you see yourself. It changes how you see your role as a parent. And from there, that's where it opens up. So I wanted to start, I want to share my screen. Let me go 1 minute. I've got to find it first. Where is it? It's hiding. Okay. So I like to start here, the yo-yo parenting model. Do you remember this from last time, anybody? You were seeing it? Do you remember it? I like starting here because when we are stuck with our parenting, especially with our partners, we see, and especially in our society, that there's only two options. There's only the strict option is like the threats and the bribes and the punishments and the control, or we give out of frustration and then the kids are willing to boost. Does anybody resonate with this? Let me know there. Make some feedback as we go along. And it's exhausting, isn't it? Because if we think there's only two options, then we don't see other possibilities. And for us to be able to, like, we know what we want, but if we don't see any other possibility, we're not going to take action to meet that. So can you show hands who feels they're more strict or more permissive on the scale? Is anybody? Is it Nate? Anyone? I'd love to hear your feedback. Can you see the screen okay?
I'm permissive and John's strict, so we're stricter. Yeah, we're too often. Yeah.
Yes. And do you feel that it clashes between you? You're fighting over what to do.
Yeah, I think
sometimes.
So. Yeah, sometimes we do, don't we? Like sometimes I make you feel guilty when you've like lost your temper, and then you make me feel guilty for not being stricter.
Yes. Yeah. Anybody else wants to say what they feel? It's frustrating, isn't it? Feeling that you're always going back and forth. It is the yo. Does it feel like a yo-yo? Back and forth?
Yeah, I think so. Like we try to be really like understanding and permissive, but then sometimes it feels like, oh, perhaps we should just be stricter, and that's what we go back and forth on, isn't it?
Yes. And so from this model here, the strict and permissive, it's both control model. If you think about it, the strict side is that we're controlling our child, and the permissive side is the child controlling us. Yes, because when we're permissive, we go way past our boundary, and the kid's ruling the roost, and that's when we end up getting a wit's end, and we blow our top and we go straight back to the threats and the punishments. And this is because most of us, we grew up in this kind of model. Most of us don't know how to hold boundaries without being mean. I don't know about you, but I always used to think boundaries meant taking things away and punishing our kids to try and stay within the boundary. Does that resonate? We feel like that's what we have to do to get the behavior we want.
100%. Yeah.
Yes.
That is definitely. Yeah. 100%. I feel like when I've been permissive, I feel like I feel a bit slightly mugged off, so therefore I become strict. I will just get really strict, and sometimes I'll be like, right, that's it.
Yes, thinking we have, and here comes from this assumption that kids need motivation to change their ways. Yes, this is what I'd love to know. What do you think the word discipline means? Actually, if you're thinking about this model, when I say the word discipline, what comes up for you? Enforcement. Yeah. Anything else? Usually punishment or taking things away. Is that what comes up for you?
Yeah, totally.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that pointy finger kind of like thing.
And control.
Yes. Control. Having control. But I want to tell you from here, control is an illusion, because as we know, we can't make our kids do anything. We can make them wish they had done something by taking it away, but we can't actually make someone do something. So actually it is an illusion. But the word discipline actually comes from the word disciple, which means to teach, not to punish. So when our child is sitting on the naughty step, or we've taken away their iPad, are they thinking of their wrongdoings, or is the whole focus on you and how mean you are and how they're not going to listen to you and how they're going to retaliate? That's actually what's happening. That's the cycle. So then what happens is, if someone took my phone away, my husband took my phone away because I spoke in a rude tone to him, would I want to listen to him or make him coffee in the morning? Probably not. You see the cycle. When we look at it as discipline, as punishment, we get stuck on this cycle because we think it's our job to control our kids and make our kids miserable, in the mistaken belief it's going to make them do better. You see the cycle. That's the cycle we get ourselves on when we think that our job is to control our children. So actually, and the reason we use the punishments and rewards, is because we think our kids need a deterrent to change their ways, or they think they need a motivation to change their ways. Yes, if you do as I say, then I'll give you a sticker. Can you see how that, like, we're thinking that they need motivation to change their ways, or that if you don't do as I say, I'm going to take your iPad away, or you're going to ban screen time, or you're not going to go to that party. Thinking they need motivation. Does that make sense to you? But that's not really what happens, is it? Because our kids already want, as human beings, we want to behave. So they don't need motivation, they actually need possibilities. They need to see another way of how to behave. So unless we teach them, they're not going to learn. So that's why this whole model, like the yo-yo parenting and the threats and the bribes and the taking things away, actually erodes our relationships and the very reason our kids actually want to listen to us. Does anybody have questions about this before we move on?
I guess I sort of find that because we try to do as much gentle parenting as we can, so we sort of listen to Daisy's feelings and try to understand them and explain things. We do take our time. We're both quite good at doing that.
Yeah.
But I must admit, sometimes I do slip into the threat and the bribe because that's what gets the result.
It's a quick result. Yes. But also I think language of listening is very different than gentle parenting, because gentle parenting actually, I think, is very child-led. It's talking about emotions the whole time and trying to make our kids happy the whole time and explaining and over-explaining to our kids. Yes, trying to convince our kids of our way maybe, and not holding the boundaries quicker. So language of listening is actually, you have both. So in language of listening, as Emma would say, it is more about becoming a coach for your child, teaching your kids the skills they need to better manage themselves, how to get their needs met within your boundary, rather than over-explaining and staying with the emotions. It's actually how it's coming from place. What does my child need to be able to stay with my boundary? So maybe the self-regulation skills, but how can my child get what they want within my boundary? That's the language of listening way. So it's a win-win. So what does my child want and what do I want, and how can we make that work within my boundary? So you're still in charge. Does that make sense? Because I think it is quite frustrating to stay stuck with the emotion side and trying to calm everyone down, and you're still left with not holding a boundary. Is that what it feels like?
It does, and it feels like that we're not doing it right.
Yes, because you're made to believe that validation is enough to change our children's behavior, but that's not true. Yes, that leaves you feeling stuck, because it's like, I've explained to you and I've heard you and you're still not changing your ways. Yes, it gets frustrating. Yes, I've got lots of clients who come from gentle parenting and they're like, I'm pulling my hair out because my kids still aren't behaving, and I'm listening and it's still not changing. It's frustrating, definitely. So I wanted to go over let me get here. Oh no, let me stop. So I've got too much on my screen. I'm trying to find everything. Here it is. So this is the language of listening way. And it is a coaching mindset. It is always starting where our child is, seeing the best in our child, getting out of the judgments, out of what we think should be happening, and actually just in the neutral observation of what is happening. And really, this is the missing step in parenting, because unless you see things through your child's eyes and you're on their side, it's very difficult then to offer the guidance. Now, the next two steps are the guidance steps. And this is what makes language of listening so different, because we go straight into the guidance. So when you see something you like, you offer a strength. So this is praise in a new way. It's not about controlling our child, but it's about changing, as Emma was saying, about bringing out our children's strengths, because children act according to who they believe they are. And we all learn best by success. So that's why the punishment doesn't work, because punishment is teaching your children that they failed and that they've got something wrong. With language of listening, we talk about the strengths, bringing out your child's inner greatness. And then when you see something you don't like, you offer a can do. So that's what your child can do within your boundary. And that's why it becomes a win-win, because you're helping your children gain problem-solving skills. We're all motivated by what we want. So when you connect your child to what they want, then you're supporting them to get what they want. Yes. Does anybody want to give me a quick example? Maybe we could go through it. Through an example of a tricky situation. Anybody? No.
Ours
Yes,
ours was cleaning teeth.
Cleaning teeth. Yes. Do you know that I tell you something, that cleaning teeth is the need. We're talking about the needs, the need for bedtime. Is it bedtime usually a battle, or is it just the cleaning the teeth?
It's more.
It goes through phases. Sometimes it's the morning part, sometimes it's an evening part. She's very cyclical.
Yeah.
Yes. And how old is she?
She's
5.5.
coming up.
5.5. The same what you see here is that validate how much she hates brushing teeth. Yes. When in language listening, we say children have to keep communicating till they feel heard. So when you say what you see, she doesn't have to act out how much she hates it. Because what we typically do is we go straight into trying to convince them how much they should brush their teeth. Or we give them all the reasons of the merits of brushing their teeth. Does that feel like that? We're trying to convince her to brush her teeth. And we get into a battle. So the more reasons we give about all the reasons why she should brush her teeth, she's going to come back with all the reasons why she shouldn't brush her teeth. And then we're in a battle. So it's not our job to get our children to like brushing their teeth. She doesn't have to like it. She just has to do it. Okay. So when you've acknowledged, oh my goodness, like you hate brushing your teeth. It's just so boring. Every single day we have to brush our teeth twice a day. She doesn't have to then escalate her behavior to prove to you how much she hates it. And then we can be in the can-dos. Now the can-do, this is quite a big overview, because in language of listening, we have the basic needs, which I'll be sharing a bit with you. But the quickest way to change a child's behavior is understanding what need it's meeting. So if we look at, let me try and get you the other screen. Was here. Is language of listening. Let me see. So for the example of the brushing the teeth, we have what language of listening does is that it breaks it down into that all behavior is driven by healthy needs. Everything your children are already doing is meeting that need. It's either in a way you like or it's in a way you don't like. Okay. Yes, but it's all meeting a need. Not all behavior is healthy, but all behavior is driven by healthy needs. So when you spend your time focusing on what is the need behind my child not brushing her teeth, then you can replace it with the behavior you do like. So if it's a need for experience, it's like, I want to explore, I want to taste things and climb things. We see this in toddlers' behavior. Yes, they want to climb and be and do. This is the need for experience, but we have the need for connection. Not to be confused for attention, but the need for connection is feeling noticed, understood, validated, sense of importance and belonging. And then we have the need for power, which is feeling confident in myself, able to self-control, able to make choices. So if we think about it in the eyes of not brushing teeth, we look at it, is the need for connection? Is it that when I don't brush my teeth, I get the need for connection? If I don't brush my teeth, then I have your attention. Yes, I feel noticed, I feel validated. Or is it the need for power? It's like, well, you've just taken my iPad away, so I'm not going to do something you want. Yes. Or the need for more control. I want to make a choice. I want to decide when I brush my teeth or how I brush my teeth. Does that make more sense? So when we look behind, then we can help our children meet that need, their need for connection or the need for power in a way we do like. And then she won't have to be so adamant about not brushing her teeth. So does any of those resonate about brushing the teeth?
I would say with Daisy, I think it's a sense of what was the experience? Is that the one? Oh no, actually, sort of like power. She's quite she knows her own mind.
If she wants to decide. She wants to decide.
She's a wild woman.
Yes. So do you know what? So here's the boundary. The can do of brushing the teeth doesn't change, but when she brushes her teeth, it changes. I just worked with a client recently, and their daughter didn't want to use 4 or 5, gets into battles about brushing her teeth, but now she gets to. I've got someone coming on. She now gets to decide when she brushes her teeth, meeting her need for power. The boundary of brushing the teeth doesn't change, but when she does it, well, that's up to her. So when you empower your children to make choices within your boundary, win-win. So you see, the boundary doesn't change. You're not trying to, she doesn't have to like brushing her teeth. You're not trying to convince her to like it. Hi, Anna. So the more chances you get to empower her to make those choices, to find her own solutions, she's automatically meeting her need for power in a way you do like, so she won't have to act out in a way you don't like. It's by digging her heels in. Yeah.
So Camilla, when there's sort of boundaries are like enforced in the sense of Edie, since she's gone back to school, has cried every day. She's fine up until we get to the school classroom door, and then she cries.
Oh, you've frozen. And she cries.
Yeah, and she sort of reverts to sort of she's like, I just want to stay at home and stuff. And like it's got to the point where the teacher just physically drags her in, crying.
Yes. Well,
yes. She has to be in classroom at a certain time. Like yeah. I feel like I don't know whether that's connection, i.e. separation, or whether that's a power. How, like, I suppose I've got 2 questions. How do you identify the motivation, whether it's connection or power? And then
yes, well, crying actually is the need for power, is actually the root cause. The root of power is self-control. And actually, crying is good. Crying is actually her adapting to her boundary. So I would bring that out as a strength and say, do you know what? Crying feels good. Crying actually releases hormones. Crying actually helps our children adapt to their environment. So rather than stopping that, I would actually bring that out as a strength. It's like, you know what you need to stay. You know what you need to get the tears out before you go to school. Connected to that strength part of I know how to calm down. I know how to stay. That's far better than trying to stop her crying. Crying is working for her. Crying helps her stay. So how amazing for her to have the inner voice of, I know what I need to be able to stay at school. Yes, I know how to calm down. I know how to stay. That's the root of power, of controlling myself, of being able to have an impact. That's how I see crying. So crying is actually a good thing for our kids. Crying means they're adapting. And to give that as a strength rather than her seeing that there's something wrong with crying, or that she can't do it, or that, no, she is doing it. She is going to school. And crying helps her stay. You could even say what you see is like, you hate leaving me, like you don't like that transition. You just don't like it. So she's then connected to what she knows what she likes, she knows what she wants, and she feels empowered.
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously we do the exact opposite and say, look, all your friends are in, like we justify.
Yes, we're trying to convince her. And what happens is when we try and convince her, she feels she's wrong for doing what she's doing. She feels wrong for who she is.
Right.
She feels there's something wrong with her. So therefore she has to act out more to show you how much she hates it. But when you just accept that you don't like leaving me, like you just rather be at home. She already knows she likes, once she's there, she's fine, isn't she? She loves being with her friends, she knows that, but there's something about the transition, and the crying helps her stay. So attach her to that inner greatness, and she knows what she needs, she knows who she is, she knows what she likes.
That's really interesting. I've never thought of it like that. Yeah.
It
yes,
sounds
language
mad,
of listening
Laura.
is so different.
It sounds balmy, and when Camilla told me, I was like, what? And obviously now it totally fits in with everything, you know, allow the tears. And now,
yes,
yeah, I
yes.
just like allow the tears and just say what I see. I hear you don't want to do this, or I see you don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And
They don't have to like it, exactly. It's not your job to convince them.
And it just
And
kind of like, boom, yeah, they're like, oh, okay, and it's okay to cry. And then the crying stops. It's like,
yes,
okay.
crying means that you're working through it. Crying means you're adapting. Crying is good. So you know, like how amazing it is to change that inner voice of your child. That I know what I want. I know how to get what I want. I know how to stay, rather than there's something wrong with me, or I should like school, or why don't I like school? Because everyone's telling me I should like it, but I hate it. Can you see there's that mismatch in them? So then if children have to keep communicating until they feel heard, they have to up their ante. They have to get louder and louder to prove to you. Yeah, and you're trying to convince them otherwise, and they're trying to convince you, and it's like this whole battle. Everyone's trying to convince everybody. So it's a different way of seeing things.
Yeah, definitely. It's fascinating.
And I tell you, it's amazing. We worked with Hugo. He hated school. Oh my goodness, he hated school. And everyone was trying to convince him of how amazing school was, and how expensive it was, and how he has to like it, and just freeing him up to hate it. He's now willingly going. He doesn't have to like it, but he goes, and actually he's doing well. When you free your children up to like what they like and don't like what they don't like, even when you hold the boundary, it's amazing how less resistance we get. Okay, so any more questions on the needs here? No. Okay, so okay, what I wanted to talk a bit about getting on the same side as your partner is a lot of the trouble we get into when we're arguing with our partners is we're arguing about the how to discipline, or how to control our kids, or how to get the behavior we want. We focus on the how to, and I want us to get back to the higher level agreement first with our partners, is to really ask, you know, what is our outcome for our family? What is it actually that we want for our families? And I think if we especially turning up here in a parenting session, is that I bet you all want the same things for your children. Yes, what do we want at the end of the day for our children? Anybody want
them to be happy, and we want them to be safe.
Safe, happy, safe. Yes, and successful and well regulated, and anything else?
And to be happy.
Yeah, kind.
Yeah. Do you know, funny enough, happy comes a lot, but you know how to teach our kids to be happy is not actually to make them happy in the moment. Do you know that? It's quite funny. So research, this is a bit of a sideline, but research has said that actually when we try and make our kids happy in the moment, what do we tend to do is we tend to go past our boundary, or give them stuff, or make them, yes, in the moment, make them happy, thinking that's going to make a well, happy adult. But actually what makes a really well, happy adult is an adult who knows what they like, who can see the possibilities in life, who can self-regulate, who has good communication skills, who can feel frustrated and get through it. So actually, if we always make our kids happy in the moment, they become adults who aren't happy. Because to be happy as adults, we have to learn how to be frustrated. We have to learn how not to get what we want and still be okay. That is what truly makes us happy as adults. I don't know if you ever thought about it like that.
No, it's really
Emma's-
frustrating because you're so right, actually. Like, I feel like sometimes, like the other day, I let Edie, she was really happy because I let her break the rules and sit with her dinner on her lap. And so that was my treat for her. But actually, like what you're saying is, I just broke one of my boundaries because we've always insisted that we sit at the table. And her treat,
yes.
just so
Do you know
funny,
what?
isn't it?
It's funny, exactly. But however, I want to say that if that really meant a lot to her, and once in a while she does get that, then that's not really breaking your boundaries because she gets what she wants as well as majority of the time your wound is. So yeah, don't beat yourself about that. But you know, if that made you really happy, then yes, it's compromise, isn't it? It's like my daughter too loves having a TV dinner, and once a week she gets to have a TV dinner, and the rest of the time we're at the table. So that's sort of like, that's connecting her to what, you know, what I want matters. Yes, what she wants matters, and she feels good about it. But yes, in the moment, if we're just focusing on making our kids happy in the moment, it actually backfires. So think about that. So when we start thinking about what we want as the long-term goal for our family, then we can start asking ourselves, is the day-to-day actions getting me where I want to be? This is such a huge thing to think about, because it's so much in parenting, we're just focusing on the moment, isn't it? It's exhausting and relentless, and we just want to get through the day, and we look at the quick fixes. But we want to be asking ourselves, is it actually getting us where we want to be? And that's far more important. Yes, to giving our kids the skills they need to be able to better manage their own behavior rather than relying on the quick fixes. And then we connect to our partner on a different level, because at the end of the day, you know, if my husband ends up shouting at my kids out of frustration, I can understand why he would do that, because he was frustrated and he wants the best for my daughter. But if I was on, you know, arguing with him and not seeing eye to eye, then maybe I would go into being resentful of him, and then it breeds resentment and frustration between the two of you, rather than coming together and feeling the what is. And so once we understand, and this comes back to the can-dos and how even the language of listening model works even for adults, is because when you get to understand what it is you both want, and you can agree on the higher level agreement, you can then go into problem solving, which is really about the can-dos. What can we do? So I'll give you an example, about a funny example between me and my husband. My husband loves cooking, and I think he should go on MasterChef, because he's like, he has all these fancy knives and he loves all the cooking. And he likes washing up all his utensils and all his pans by hand. And I absolutely hate it. I've got a dishwasher. I don't want to use it. I want to use my dishwasher. Yes. So we used to fight nearly every day about right or wrong, who's right for washing up by hand and who likes a dishwasher. Do you ever get in arguments like this about the right or wrong kind of thing, kind of model, and you're trying to convince each other who's right and who's wrong, and which is the best way to do it, and which is, yes, this is what we do with our kids as well. But I got so frustrated with these arguments. I went out and I bought myself my own saucepans, my own knives and forks, my own knives, and I get to do what I want to do, and he gets to do what he wants to do. Win-win. But when you think outside the box, you find these, you can problem solve and you can find solutions. And this is the same thing with our kids as well, is when we get really clear on what you want and what you want the outcome to be, you can find different solutions. Yes. Does anybody think like that? Do the problem solving?
I think we've got better at it. We do that as a relationship, but probably not with our children, if you see what I mean. Like,
Yes.
we know that we can't pack a suitcase or backpack together, that we just pack completely differently. So when we go on holiday, we totally pack separately. We have separate bags. And we pack at different points, and we just do it. Like, one of us would even leave the house while the other person packs, because we enjoy each other so much.
Yeah. You know what works for you.
But
Yes.
it works for us because we both end up packing how we want to pack. But actually, when it comes to children, we probably, it's interesting. We do it as between us as our relationship, but we probably need to think more about that with the kids.
Yes, and when you do start thinking about that with the kids, is that really become really clear on what you actually want. I had a client who used to fight with her son about having a he about having a shower. He had to have a shower because the bath was out of order. It was being redecorated. And they used to fight all the time about trying to get the boy. He had to have a shower. The mom told he had to have a shower, and the boundary was the shower. But actually, if you think about it, the boundary isn't the shower. What is the actual true boundary? What does actually the mother wants or the parents want? For the child to be washed. So why are we fighting over a shower or a bath? Yes, my real boundary is my child has to be washed. Okay, so how he gets washed, this boy is 7, well, that's up to him. And when you let go of that control about how it has to be done, then that boy is naturally meeting his need for power because he feels empowered to make his own choices within the boundary. And this little boy, instead of fussing about getting in the shower, he went to get a big Tupperware box from the kitchen, filled it with soap, put his feet in it, and ended up washing with a sponge. But do you know what? It worked. There's an argument. The mother got got him washed, and he got washed how he wanted to. Win-win. So when we think about it like that, when you really get back to what it is that actually you want, then you free your kids up to make their own decisions. So much easier. And that's free, that they feel heard, they feel validated, what they want matters. And you're not going past your boundary. Yeah, you still hold your boundary. He has to get washed, but you just become clear on what that is. So anybody else have any other questions about that before we move on? Okay. So I want another question for you guys. So we talked about the needs, and by the way, we all have these same needs as well. And I would like to ask you how you feel and act when you don't have your needs met. It's a really interesting question to ask ourselves, because how do you feel when you don't feel noticed or understood?
Sad, angry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Frustrated. Yeah.
Frustrated. Might even cry. Funny that, isn't it?
Anybody else? When you don't feel noticed? When your kids don't listen, when your kids aren't listening, you don't feel noticed. They're not listening, they're busy playing, but maybe you've told yourself you don't feel noticed. The stories we tell ourselves.
I guess alone.
Alone. Yes. Yes. And then how do we act when we don't feel that? We don't feel that sense of connection. We're more, I know that I would shout more, I'd become more controlling. When we don't feel connected, we feel a bit of powerlessness, don't we?
It's
so maybe we become,
Sorry, it's so interesting you saying that. How would I react if I feel any of them feelings? And my first thing that I was going to say was I would act like a child.
Yes. Yes. Have a tantrum.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. And actually, do you know what? Funny enough, tantrums, the number one cause of tantrums is our children not feeling heard and feeling powerless. It's the number one cause of tantrums. So, and what do we tend to do? Tell them off or take their things away, which leads to more sense of powerlessness, yes, which fuels the cycle. It's interesting what we do. But yes, so it is interesting how when we look at it, instead of looking at it as bad behavior or behavior that, that we, naughty behavior or disrespectful, if we look at it as, of course, my child's going to act like that. Yes, because they don't feel heard. Of course, my child's going to have a tantrum because they don't feel able to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
And then ask yourself, is my response fueling more sense of disconnection or more sense of powerlessness? Or am I helping them meet the need for connection, power, and experience? And that's the same thing with our partners as well. Yes, we feel disconnected. Am I fueling that, or am I adding to their sense of feeling noticed and loved and understood? So when we look at behavior through this lens, you see all behavior makes perfect sense, even if you don't like it. Then it's easier to change, isn't it? And focusing on that. Okay. So let me go to. So this is the last. This is the last model. This is the coaching mindset. This is from wants to possibilities. And for us to see possibilities, we first have to know what we like and what we don't like. Because from our likes and don't likes, we get to what we want. And if we don't know what we want, we're never going to take action. So actually, this is another reason why Say What You See is so important with our children, is because we validate what they like and what they don't like. Because really what they like and don't like is a reflection of who they are. Yes. What we like and don't like is who we are. So if we are denied, you know, like you were saying, your daughter doesn't like going into school and we're trying to convince her that she should like going into school, well, then she feels she's wrong for liking what she likes or not liking what she doesn't like. And that detaches us from ourselves, and I don't actually take action. So this is a really good exercise. I do this with my private clients, is to really to start writing a list. It's interesting for husbands and wives to do this together, is to write what you don't like and what you do like. It could just be like, I like having a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. It could be as simple as that. Or I don't like doing the school run. Or I don't like having loud noises at home. Or I like having dinner around the table. Yes. Because then when you understand what you don't like and what you do like, then you can understand what it is actually you want for you and your family. And when you become clear on what you want, then you can decide on the possibilities of how, all the possibilities, this is the can-dos, of how to get what you do want. And from the possibilities, then you can find the solutions and maybe the wishes, because maybe you can't actually at that moment get what you want. Does that make sense? This way of seeing things?
So is this how you would like, so for the family dynamic, you would use this kind of technique for getting to what you want to as a family, like you agree what your high level goal is of how you want the family to feel, and then you use this kind of to go through things as a family.
Yes. Yes. Do you know, I had, even as I worked with a family recently, they were sick and tired of all the toys taking over the whole house. And the toys were everywhere, and the parents were getting stressed about it, and they didn't know what to do because the kids were putting the toys in every single room. So they decided that they didn't like the toys all over the house. They didn't want it. And they didn't like it. So they wanted to have at least the kitchen and the dining room as no toy area. Okay. So that is what they wanted. So coming from what they do want, and then they started seeing the possibilities. Well, they suddenly realized that actually there's too many toys. So what are the possibilities to have less toys? If you think about it, the possibilities are absolutely endless. But one possibility, for that completely outside the block, they could ban all toys in the house. Yes, that is a possibility. But they don't have to go for that. But when you think about what are the possibilities to get what I want, it is actually amazing how you can work together to find all the ways, and they're just solutions. So at this stage, you could just find those solutions that actually do work for you. And actually, this family started rotating the toys. They had so many, they actually started keeping some in the garage, and they started rotating them. So there was less toys. Built the kids up for success because there was less toys taking over their house, and they found their solution. And no toys in the kitchen or dining room. But it comes back to really to be really clear on what you do want and what you don't like. That's an example of how to use that. Okay, so any more questions? Any more questions? No. So we had a few, let me stop the sharing now. So we had, Emma, didn't we have a question? Someone emailed us over. We had a question.
Yeah. What was it? When one parent decides to discipline a child and the other one doesn't agree, A, that this behavior requires discipline, and B, how they are choosing to discipline their child. Okay, i.e., go to the room, blah, blah, blah. Should you go along with the other parent, so not to argue in front of the kids and present a united front, or should you stop and say, Daddy and Mommy will deal with this later?
Yes.
So it's like,
what would
yeah.
you do? What do you do? Yes, it's a tricky one. To go to your room, the thing with yes, first off, it is better to do the work beforehand. So you do have a united front, and language of listening gives you both options. You actually get the boundaries and the connection. But in that moment, you don't want to undermine your husband. You don't want to start an argument and have everybody against each other. So maybe for me, if my husband sent my kids to the room, maybe I would go with my daughter or my son and help them regulate and be with them to help them through that transition. And at the end of the day, I would at the end, without the kids, to start talking about what else we could do that actually works. So that's what I would do. The only time I would step in is if the discipline was aggressive or shouting or, stuff that you don't want. You have to protect your child. So that's when I would step in. If it got violent or aggressive, then I would definitely do step in. But going to your room is tricky. The thing is that with that, though, I always think with that, you don't want to rescue your child from the parent. Yes, if you're going in and you're fixing, you're undermining it, you're thinking that the child can't handle that, you can't handle that situation. I do think that each child is going to have a different relationship with each parent, depending on the kind of discipline you get. And I think that's also really good question to ask ourselves when we're disciplining our children is, what kind of relationship do I want? And why is my child listening to me? I don't want you want your child to listen to you because they trust you and they want to, they look up to you, they want to please you, not because they're fearful of you. So that's the kind of thing I would be talking about. Yes. Does that make sense? Anna, it's so good to see you.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, Anna. Do you want to talk briefly about Keith?
Yeah, I can do. So I got introduced to Camilla through a session like this. It was quite a while ago, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then after a few months of keeping it in my mind, I decided to work with Camilla, myself and my husband, one-on-one as private clients. And we're almost at the end of our 10 session program, aren't we?
Yes.
So it's spanned over a couple of months now, hasn't it? But I can honestly say there's been a massive shift for us as a family in a positive way, and the difference how we approach any kind of challenge. Obviously using language and listening has had a massive impact on how James and I parent. So we're, like you were saying, we were on the same page, and the difference in our little 2.5-year-old is massive. And before working with Camilla, I completely underestimated how much he would be able to understand, but just by using language of listening, he's responded so well to it, and he's completely different. So I think the biggest thing is really his tantrums have gone from half an hour, 45 minutes to, I've got to say now, almost non-existent, just through using language of listening. And it's amazing. It's really powerful and really simple.
Yeah, it
so
is
yeah,
simple. It is simple.
it's
I love that.
like magically simple.
And he's proud
Yeah.
of himself. Like he's really proud
So
of
proud of
himself that he
himself,
can
yeah.
calm down.
Yeah,
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that, Anna, because you know, for two and a half, he has those skills for life. He's going to be an adult, a boy, and then an adult, and even a teenager that knows how to self-regulate. He knows how to get what he wants and to calm himself down. It's amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah.
The transformation. Oh, thank you for sharing that.
That's
Thank
okay.
you. So does anybody have any other questions about tonight? No? If you do have any questions, will you to let Emma know? And I look forward to hearing how you get on. Please do let Emma know, because she comes back and tells me. Very much, everybody. Wait for Emma to come back.
Actually, one quick thing, like I've
Yes.
obviously followed Camilla on Instagram, so you've put loads of content on there as well, haven't you? That's really helpful. So have a look at that as well.
Yes, I've been adding to my Instagram
Yeah.
at the moment. Thank you for that. Yes, there's lots of things.
Yeah.
It does, you know, I think changing our ways, our parenting ways, takes a leap of faith in a way, because we're so used to seeing it one way. And the more I teach language of listening, the more I know this way just makes so much sense, and it's so much, it makes parenting joyful. Because you're not battling every day. That's what I wanted to say.
I think one thing I've noticed, and it's something that I'm working on within myself, but it's my expectations that I put upon Moog and Daisy are very high.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of my irritability comes from. And then when, you know, Moog will be like, you know, what is it that I can do? And I'm just sort of like, I don't know. And, you know, poor Daisy is just being a 5.5-year-old, and I'm trying to, you know, I've got a friend whose child can read at 5.5, and I'm like, Daisy can't, you know, the expectations that I put.
Yes.
And I think it's just I'm definitely going to put this in place. Hopefully it will help me, but I find that that's where a lot of my with parenting comes from. It's just that my expectations are too high.
Yes, the assumption that, you know what, that is the first step, is the awareness, which is, you know, the awareness of where you are. And language of listening, you know, one of the premises is all growth is through acceptance, and it's acceptance of where you are and how you see things. And I think that's the same thing with our kids, is when we have such high expectations, then it's not accepting them for who they are. So then they grow up thinking there's something wrong. Yes, so they get more frustrated, and that's the cycle we find ourselves in. And that's what the first step in language listening is to say what you see. So I do have a book on my website which gives you hundreds of examples of how to use them. When they say what you see really is the missing step in parenting, because it really gets you out of the assumptions, out of judgment, out of the should be's. Yes, that's the assumption that my child should be reading, my child should be not be having a tantrum. We react to that rather than actually what is happening, and that's the missing step. And with language, the say what you see really is the missing step, because unless you are connected and you see through your child's eye, it's very hard to stay calm, isn't it? When we see through judgment, we're so quick to react when we're in judgment, because we see behavior as
It came out massively with the homeschooling.
Oh, I'm sure it's stressful. It's stressful. It is. It's hard. We need to go easy on ourselves as well. Parenting is hard and relentless, and homeschooling was stressful. Let's hope we don't have to go back to homeschooling. Yes, I'm glad my kids were teenagers and nearly teens in lockdown. Yes, I feel for you. Lockdown in little ones, it's stressful. Yeah, it's a good shift. I think this is what, is focusing on what we see and our reactions is the key. Because so often in traditional parenting, we focus on fixing the child, and we don't see our role within the dynamics. And our kids' behavior does not happen in a vacuum. It is a reaction. Their behavior is a reaction to our behavior. And so when we learn to control ourselves and change how we see things, then our kids automatically change because they're reacting to us, not the other way around. So that's why it becomes easier, because it's far easier to control ourselves than our kids. I know it doesn't seem like that, but it is true. True to control our own thoughts and be aware of our thoughts. A lot of the time we're not even aware, are we? We think it's our children. It's funny, isn't it? Okay, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
That
you.
was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
And that so rings true, Camilla, with when we heal ourselves, I use the word heal, but when we're in tune with ourselves, when we're not reactive, then everything like kind of falls into kind of place as well. One
Yes.
question, Camilla, what would you do if one, I know you've touched on this, but just to clarify, because this was a message that I got earlier as well, when the one parent is like the strict parent and the child must obey my rules and I'm the boss kind of parent. I know you've kind of touched on that a little bit, and then you've got maybe one of my beautiful sisters who's trying to parent in more this kind of say what you see language of listening way. How do we kind of like get that balance? How
Yes.
and I think that's probably working one-to-one with you, isn't it?
It is work. Yes, that does help. It's validating that father's perspective first, because he wants the best for his child. The reason he's controlling his child is he thinks that's the only reason. He must be feeling completely powerless himself because he thinks his role is to control a child. Yes, is to control somebody, and that's how we get the behavior we want. So to validate that actually the root of that, that father wants the best for his child, that's why he's doing it. Rather than rescuing the child from the father, unless it goes past into the aggressive behavior. Because I really want to say that, the way we treat our children is the first way, that their first understanding of what the relationship is like. So if you're shouting at your kids, or you're punishing your kids, you're teaching them that's how relationships work in the world. And I know for myself, I don't want to send my kids out to the world thinking it's acceptable for somebody to shout at them, a partner to shout at them, or a teacher to shout at them. I don't want, we have to think about that in the long term. But I think to get back to the father is actually to see his greatness. He does want the best for his child, and that's why he's doing it. And to say that to the child is, you can say, do you know what, daddy shouts at you because that's how he was parented, or that's how he thinks he gets the right behavior. And to separate his behavior from the child, because the child takes the shouting as they've done something wrong. Yes, it's about the child, and that's how the child processes that. So when you teach the child that actually daddy's shouting at you because he thinks he was told that's how he gets the behavior you want, then you are protecting your child from the messages they take about themselves. Yes. And then I tell you something, I asked, when I changed it this way, my husband used to shout, he took a while coming. And I said to my daughter, how come you listen to me and not daddy? And she said this in front of him. He said, because you get me, mommy, and daddy shouts. And he soon come, because if you're shouting at your kids or controlling your kids, you will have a very different relationship than the parent that is connected and using language of listening. And the other parent who is shouting will start seeing that. So even if you don't do anything, you carry on doing what you're doing, and you don't try and fix, or you don't try and control the shouting parent. That the one that is shouting will suddenly realize, how come when the kids listen to you and they're not listening to me? How come it's easy for you and it's not for me? They start seeing it, and I promise you, 99% of the time they come round, because they're like, why is it so easy for you and I'm finding it difficult? they will see the difference. So that's how I would handle it.
That's like the ripple effect again, isn't it? Like, yeah, that's like the ripple effect with everything that we talk about, rippling down. Yeah, brilliant, Camilla. And yeah, and like I said again, when we heal ourselves, I was a reactive mom. So I shouted at Hugo because I was unhappy myself and unhappy in myself, and Hugo got it all the time. Like whenever anything wrong, I shouted at Hugo, and he would go to bed. I've mentioned this many times, saying I'm a bad boy mommy, and I just didn't understand where he was getting it from, and he was getting it because I was the one who was shouting.
Yes,
And that's because my needs weren't fulfilled. And I'm sure, Camilla, you may get that with a lot of your clients, that actually it's that kind of mothers or fathers needs aren't being met, you know, and we end up venting our anger
exactly
at that small child who might be a little bit irritating, but you know,
or a lot irritating. It's okay, our kids are irritating. They can drive us crazy.
And then you kind of like, any of you ladies, hands up who's done that that reactive, like kind of rah at your child, when actually it's not your child that you're really that angry with. It's a situation that's happened that day, or sometimes you're angry, you shout at your child when actually you're trying to get the other person's attention in the house. Done that as well.
yes, exactly.
So,
and you know, the way that I love language of listening, because it is the only model, I believe, that you actually have your needs matter as much as your child's, and you don't have to fix your child. Anna will say, do you know what, it is such a revelation when you realize you don't have to make your kids happy, like you don't have to fix it, you can have both. And I really think it's the only model that actually you do have both. You have boundaries, you get exactly what you want, you see the possibilities, and you support your child to get what they want. You have both. I think that the gentle parenting is too child-led, and you just get stuck with staying with the emotions and validating your child. But validation isn't enough to change behavior. You have to.
The language of listening is really good when you've got that kind of bit like you, Laura. Then you've got John, right? Yeah, one's that way, one's hi John. You've got one discipline, more disciplined, he said, more disciplined, and you more the other way. Then I suppose the language of listening is kind of that perfect in between, isn't it?
Yes, because I bet, John, you want to have your boundaries, but you don't want to be mean. Yes, like you want what you want. You don't want to be in battle. You don't want to punish your kids. And if you could have your boundaries and not punish, you would want to take that. And vice versa, Laura, if you what you want matters as well. But if you feel like you're being mean, holding boundaries, then you're going to be more permissive. Yes, because you think you're mean holding the boundaries. And then if we think we're mean holding boundaries, then we do it from a mean place. So actually this way you get, everybody in the family gets what they want. Yes, you get what you want. It's a different,
and it's interesting. We'll go now, but I first contacted Camilla when Hugo was either 2 or 3 years old, right? And you know, Graham had to pay for it at the time because I wasn't earning any money. So you know, and it was like, no, we don't need a parenting coach. Why do we need a parenting coach? And it was when Graham left me, and it was when we hit lockdown and my money went lower than ever, that I hired the parenting coach on my own, because I needed, it just, and I was like, why didn't I do this years ago? Because we had like 4 years of like, it was hard. Tea time, bedtime, brushing teeth time. I'm not saying bedtime has been cured, because, but I accept that Hugo is not a sleeper. And that was one of the best things I ever did. Just kind of accept it, that is him. Because he felt unloved because he couldn't sleep. He felt unloved because he didn't like food. It's so interesting, isn't it, when you when we look at this? I know we did it in great detail, Camilla.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. Yes.
Right. Anyway, thank you, ladies. Camilla, I will I will tag you in the post that I upload this to, so that you can all get you. But it's on Instagram. Is it keeping your cool parenting?
Yes, yes, it is. Yes.
Keeping
Come to
your
your
cool parenting.
Yes, on
Your cool
Instagram. That's where I
parenting.
am mostly at the moment.
Yeah. All right, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.